Hey, welcome to Conversations with Carrie. I have got to say, it has been too long. And that's my bad, y'all. But now most of us are stuck in the house. There's a little thing called the coronavirus running around outside. So I thought, what better time than to talk about the books that I've read so that you know what you need to run out and grab. Actually, no, don't run out and grab it. Get on Amazon, get on Walmart, I don't know, some online service, because we got to keep the economy going, and order yours. So we're going to be talking about 4 books today, but don't worry, I also have some to be reads coming up, and that's going to be another video. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? All right, first I have The Silver Star by Jeanette Walls, and some of you may know her because she actually wrote a memoir called The Glass Castle. I read that back in, I want to say 2013, and this was recommended to me by a really special person, and I was like, okay, I love The Glass Castle. That was actually a real story, so I was like, well, let me check this out. Now, this is fiction, but it's about 2 young girls, like a little sister and an older sister, that their mom... she ain't about the right, y'all. She is just not about the right. And so therefore they kind of go, to their uncle's house to find out, which is back in their mother's hometown, to live with him. And he's great and accepts them. He's a little bit of a hoarder. And they basically learn to grow. And then there's a really shocking thing that happens to one of the sisters that causes, it's kind of a ripple in the city because it's like a small town down south. Oh, and also this is set in the 60s and 70s. And basically the sisters just kind of go through growing up together, but growing up with a mom who basically the mom had some serious, I would say she's probably bipolar, but she had some mental disorders, and I say that plural because back then I don't think people were as conscious of it, or it was very much a taboo subject. So they kind of grow up with her and she disappears, and they're trying to dodge molestation and everything else, but something big happens and the sisters kind of grow a different bond. And I would say it's a really good story, actually. It starts out a little slower because the mom just got on my nerves so much, because I was like, really, what is she doing? But you'll get past that, and it's actually a really good story about sisterhood and family, and courage, I would say. So I definitely recommend this one. Again, Jeanette Walls, The Silver Star. I think you'll like it. It's a really good, and it's a quick read. All right, y'all. I feel like I did you a disservice because I waited way too long to talk about this book, but Such a Fun Age by Reid. If you are up on the book scene at all, you know that this has been a hot commodity. I saw it everywhere. I feel like it was all over Instagram. And it's such a good book, Such a Fun Age, such a good book. But seriously, it really is a good book. So it's about a young black girl who she's trying to figure out her life. 20-something, she's out of school. She comes from a really hardworking family where everybody knew exactly what they wanted to do as soon as they wanted to do it. And she's not really at that place. So right now she is working as a babysitter. But the thing is, she loves babysitting. She loves the little girl that she babysits for. And it's for this white family. And the mom, they're a well-to-do family. And the mom is basically she's an influencer who's kind of blown up. But the thing about influencers is that if you don't know about them, you don't know about them. And if you're not really up and paying attention to social media, you really don't know about them. And so the mom, is feeling okay, I love my babysitter and I'm trying to connect with her. But the young girl is kind of who's this white woman talking crazy to me? But there was an incident. This happens at the very beginning of the book, so this won't be a spoiler alert. But the young black girl was out partying with some friends, and she gets called by her babysitter hey, can you come take my daughter? We've had an incident at the house. And she's been drinking, and she's dressed for the club, when you 21 and how you dress for the club, that's how she's dressed. And so she goes and takes a child, and she goes to the local supermarket with her friend, and a security guard and an old white woman think that she has stolen the child. Yep, they think she's stolen the child and parading around in the grocery store. Yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, so a guy films it. This other guy, a customer, films it, and she's going through the whole thing. The father comes, takes care of the situation, but that kind of starts a spiral of other events in the book. So it is such a good story. I was actually out to dinner once, just enjoying my dinner and reading a book. If you don't take yourself out to dinner, honey, you need to, because sometimes you take a book and sometimes you just sit there and people watch, whatever you want to do. The guy next to me at the bar actually was, he Googled the book, and he was like, oh, Such a Fun Age. Yeah, I think he was like, yeah, I've heard about that, or I had to Google it to find out more about it. You know, sometimes they will say whatever when they want to talk to you. But anyway, but he was saying how it's actually a play on the titles, because you think the book is about the young 20-something-year-old black woman who's like, you know, trying to figure out life. Her friends are getting jobs and making a lot of money, and here she is struggling and broke, because when you're 20-something and you paying back student loans, half the time, yeah, you broke. But anyway, but he was like, it's actually a play on actually the age we're in right now, where, you know, people just make assumptions, and like just like the old white woman at the grocery store assumed that she had stolen the child, and then also somebody was recording it. Like, this is a day and age where these things have been happening all along, but now you can record it and it can become a big to-do, and it can be a social media moment. It can be you know, it can jump in the news and you have your 15 minutes of fame, all of that. So such a fun age. Is more than meets the eye. It's a really light read, but I love that it tackles racism. It tackles, I would say, some sexism. Amazing story. I highly recommend it. I think this was the debut book by this author that I'm aware of. And I actually was reading some articles about this author, and she was saying that this is probably the third book she's actually written, because her first one didn't do well, or like she just didn't get any agents that wanted it. So for all my aspiring authors out there, stick with it, because you can have a bestseller like this. This is great for like teenagers, college students, and grown women. Hello. And again, if you have a book club, or if you haven't started your book club yet, I highly recommend this. Jump on it. All right. Kristan Higgins, I'm sure you guys have seen this author around. She's what they would, I don't like using this term as much, and I've used it on my channel before, but saying like chick lit, because it's like a book mainly that women are attracted to, but it's a really light read. But Kristan Higgins does a lot of female stories, I'll put it that way. But actually it's a really good story. I love that there's a lot of different things about the book, but it's multicultural. And it's about a woman who has gets pregnant as a teenager and is living with her grandmother. Her grandmother basically kicks her out, and so she raises her teenage daughter on her own, and then her grandmother calls her back to the house and was like, hey, I need you to come back, under the premise that she's going to give her daughter, her great granddaughter, yes, her entire inheritance. So it tells her the story of like what the mother's going through, and it tells a story about why the father's no good, and it's all based on like the grandmother actually lost a son, and it tells you the whole story of like how the son was lost, and talks about her perspective, and when you lose someone that close to you, how you never really quite recover. It's kind of like balling up a piece of paper and then trying to smooth it out. It's never going to be as smooth as it was, and that's what the grandmother's going through, and they kind of live out this this tension between them together. And I'm not gonna do a spoiler alert. Sometimes y'all know I will tell you the story, but it's actually a really quick but interesting read. And I love that it was like the grandmother is kind of like a spitfire. She's kind of feisty, and so is the granddaughter. So it's actually a really good story. I haven't read tons of her books, and I think I just picked this one up. Knowing me, I probably picked it up at a half-price bookstore, because you know how I do. I do try to support my local library, but sometimes they don't have my books. And I think I just grabbed this one randomly. I think it was like $7 or something at half-price bookstore, and it was actually really good. I had my sister read it as well, and she also approves of it. So I definitely recommend this if you're just looking for, you know what, it's a lot going on out in the world right now. I need to sit at home and be entertained, and I don't want to just necessarily watch Netflix all day. These type of books, you're going to be in for a treat. And this one, The Rosie Results. So I am currently reading this one, and this is a trilogy. I do not know how to pronounce his first and last name. Simsion. Okay, you see who the author is. Yes. But The Rosie Result is the third. The first one was The Rosie Project, and then it was The Rosie Effect. And I love this book. If you've read Eleanor Oliphant is Perfectly Fine, it's kind of similar along the same lines, but not quite as dark as hers was. And I did review that book previously on my channel. But this one, if you've ever seen Big Bang Theory and Sheldon, like Sheldon's the biggest nerd, and because he's like, you can't say like, hey, I didn't catch your name. And he'll literally, like the main character will literally say, I didn't throw it. So again, it's about a guy who, you know, I would call him Sheldon, but that's not his name. But his, ultimately, like Rosie is his wife. And he ends up having a child. So their child is now 10 years old in this book. And in the third book, I'm not done with it yet. So let's see, I'm about halfway through. I'll probably finish it this week because I'll be sitting at home. He's a scientist, so he's very like scientific in how he approaches everything. So it's a matter of, he's like, okay, if my son needs to do this, let me create a plan. And then I also need to know I need to have a income because he needs to stay at home with the son. The wife, they just moved back to Australia, and the wife has to work. And as we know, and that's what I love about this book, it talks about some bigger issues, but in a really light way. But like a woman, you know, is expected to stay home and sacrifice her career for her child, versus like the guy, it's like, okay, well, what about the husband? What about the father? He helped create this child too. So the father the father in this particular story, you know, ends up quitting his job. He also gets in trouble he's a professor, and because of his personality, he says some stuff that's completely inappropriate. He was trying to get to a point, but as we know in this society, when you can stream anything, or you can show anything on social media, they just show the clip of basically him saying the wrong thing from a racial standpoint. But I love that the book deals with autism, sexism, gender bias, racism even. And I'm not done yet, so I can't tell you how it ends. Well, I wouldn't tell you because it's a spoiler alert. But I think it's a great story. And again, I don't normally read a lot of male authors. I just don't. A lot of times when I'm reading, because I like to read stuff about like women, and sometimes I'm like, there's only so much you're going to tell me as a man. Not to say that you might not have some insight and some great research, but I think sometimes a woman's voice has just a different feel to it. But the Rosie result, yes, that is what I'll be finishing up hopefully this week. But yeah, you guys, I such good books. Again, you know that you need to be doing something other than just watching TV and working this week. So I recommend these. These are some great stories. I'll make sure I link them down below. But before you go and you need something else to read, don't forget to head over to carrielee.com. I am still writing. I am still posting to my blog, and I would love for you to subscribe. And don't forget, even for this channel, but make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you can get my book review, so at least you know what books to keep on reading. So thanks again. I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.